to module 15.5, rationalizing the denominators. So now this time, let's take a look at how we can rationalize a denominator with two terms. Okay, so if the denominator of a fraction contains a sum or difference involving square root, rationalize the denominator by multiplying both the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. The word conjugate is basically sound like a negate. Okay, go against. If we want to go against square root, we take a square because they cancel out. If I want to go against subtraction, I will do addition. It's kind of negate, conjugate, opposite to each other. So in module 15.4, I was mumbling something about multiplying this very last thing I did, where I changed the last problem, one with a plus sign, one with a minus sign. It mentioned something about difference of squares. And then by looking at our answer does not contain any square roots. So now we can use that same idea, because if I have two terms, how am I going to get rid of the radical? Well, we can conjugate the 5 minus square root of 2. If I can multiply its conjugate, which is conjugate of these two terms, is actually 5 plus square root of 2. Because in that case, 5 minus square root of 2 times 5 plus square root of 2. If I can make them into like a difference of square, then my answer will not contain any radicals. And that's how I actually get rid of them, is by doing difference of square. So difference of square says my a whole thing squared minus my b, which is square root of 2, whole thing squared. Since square and square root cancels out, I just now get rid of my radical. That would just be minus 2. 5 squared is 25, so 25 minus 2 what gives me 23. All right, so that means I will multiply the same thing on the numerator as well. All right, so my numerator now becomes 3 that will times those two terms. So that was 3 times 5 plus square root of 2 in the parenthesis, because these are two terms representing one numerator. Put them in the parenthesis. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times positive square root of 2 is positive 3 times square root of 2. Okay, so this is actually the right answer, but sometimes the homework may ask us to write them as multiple terms. So we can actually split this into two different terms, because since the two term on top shares the same LCD. So if you type in 15 over 23 plus 3 times square root of 2 over 23, that will also be correct. Okay, so eventually this form is more commonly seen, okay, where we split them up. There's definitely nothing wrong with write them all together. There's a reason why I'm just not saying at the moment until we get to imaginary number. So either way will work. All right, let's take a look at another one. All right, so this one I have no variable down here, but I still got two terms as well in the denominator. So let's conjugate them, which means make them into like a difference of square. So that will be plus 4 times square root of 7, top and the bottom. So if I can make them into difference of square, then I can get rid of my square roots. All right, my a is square root of 2, whole thing squared, minus my b, 4 times square root of 7, whole thing squared. So square and square root cancels out, so that just leaves me with a 2, minus, oh, be careful here, power rule. the exponent on top of the 4 is 1, so this is really seeing as 4 squared, which is 16. Square and square root cancel out for the radical, that would just be 7. So this is really 2 minus 16 times 7. So that'll be negative 110. So my whole denominator becomes negative 110. My numerator would just be x times square root of 2 plus 4 times square root of 7. So there's nothing wrong with this. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and do distribution and say this is x times square root of 2 plus 4x square root of 7, both term over negative 110. All right, this negative sign can also be written in front of the fraction as well. Okay, I would actually prefer you write this in front of the fraction. Okay. All right, so that's my answer right there. All right, this one is not as bad. This one is, so again, 2 term in the denominator, that's conjugate, which is I will multiply square root of z minus 7 on the numerator and the denominator. All right, so let's see what this becomes. So square root of z plus 7 times square root of z minus 7. So difference of square says my a square root of z whole thing squared minus my b 7 whole thing squared. So square and square root canceled out, that leave me with a z minus 49. All right, my numerator, square root of z. Z. All right, square root of z times square root of z minus 7. So let's multiply that out. Square root of z times square root of z is really just z, because that becomes square root of z squared. So square and square root cancel out, that just give me a z. Square root of z times negative 7 is negative 7 square root of z. All right, full term over z minus 49. All right, so when it comes to, be careful now. This is, you don't want to split this. The one I split earlier, there was only, it was only one term in the denominator. So when you have multiple terms like this one, you try not to split them, because some student will say, hey, let's have the z together, the negative 7 square root of 7 over 49 together. Okay, because right now there are 2 terms over 2 terms, so let's try not to split them, which is something we seen back in module 14. Gotta be one. If we see them as 1 term over 1 term, they are not. There's nothing. The factors are not the same where we can cancel. So just leave it like that. All right. So when it comes to rationalize the denominator, when we have 2 terms in the denominator, we will actually conjugate them. That means we will actually create a difference of square type of problem for my denominator, so the radical can actually cancel out. That's called conjugate the denominator. Alrighty, so that will conclude this lecture video. Thank you for watching.